So the first victim tonight is an accomplished guitarist in the lineage of Steve Vai and Eddie Van Halen. He shares his hard-won wisdom on YouTube about how to play guitar really well, really fast. He's currently midstream on the Rockspostrophe tour, and he's appeared in films from Pretty in Pink alongside Molly Ringwald to The Running Man alongside Arnold. He's a champion of the guitar riff. He is son of Frank Zappa. Please welcome to the stage, Dweezil Zappa.
Hello, thank you for having me. Hello, hello.
Okay, you're a man of the guitar.
Yes.
Do you have a favorite riff?
There's so many good ones. I mean, arguably, Edward Van Halen has come up with some of the very best guitar riffs of all time. One of them being Unchained from the Fair Warning album. And the funny thing about that one is, if you learn to play it, it's a very guitaristic riff. Like, it lays under the fingers very well. But oddly, he wrote it on the piano.
Oh.
Yes.
What got you into guitars?
Well, my dad played guitar, so of course, I saw him playing guitar as a kid, and I would go to the concerts, and I would see just the fact that when he was playing guitar, it wasn't the standard type of thing that a lot of guitar players go through, which is you learn to play something, you rehearse it a lot, and it becomes sort of like almost like an athletic routine that you are able to accomplish. My dad was not that way. He was much more a spontaneous composer. He was really a composer in general, so he used the guitar as an instrument to react to the music that was being performed on stage. Now that requires having a different state of mind to play and to be open to creating spontaneously all kinds of different thematic ideas and variations in rhythm. So he had the ability to play for 10 or 15 minutes without repeating himself, not because he was a guy that had like, here's my lick number one that I play in every song, but because he was really just making it up extemporaneously in the moment, which is very much harder to do because you need to have access to the part of your brain that allows you to react to the music and edit enough ideas so that you're able to play with diversity, rhythmic diversity and melodic diversity, and keep someone's attention while you're making something up as you go. And that is sort of a lifelong pursuit. And many jazz musicians, that's something that they work towards, but to be a rock and roll guitar player and play not specifically only rock and roll, not specifically jazz, but a fusion of all of that stuff. I was around that all the time, so I knew that was a possibility. But as a kid, I would see my dad play at shows, and I would think, you got to know a lot to do what he's doing. And so at the point where I started wanting to play guitar when I was 12, it was because of Edward Van Halen and players like Randy Rhoads, who played in Ozzy Osbourne's band. So if you put it into perspective, in the early 80s, like 1980, 81, 82, that's the most popular music in the world was hard rock. And it was on the radio everywhere. It was selling. It was the highest grossing products out there. So I was influenced by that kind of sound, and it made me want to play guitar. And so to some degree, I still have a huge inspiration that always comes from hearing any of that kind of stuff.
I think that's a segue to perhaps play your first record.
Sure.
That you ever recorded.
Well, it happens to be the first record I spent my own money on that I went to a store and purchased is Van Halen's Fair Warning album. Yes. But the thing about it is, I had gotten really into Van Halen, and right around the time I was hearing it a lot on the radio and my friends were listening to it, we received a phone call at our house, and this is back when you would have a phone on the wall, and it would have multiple lines, and somebody could be in one room on the phone, and somebody could be in another room, pick up that phone, and listen in on the conversation. But somebody called our house purporting to be Edward Van Halen. So at this time, in the early 80s, there's no MTV, there's nothing where you would really know what somebody truly sounds like. Or how could you know who this person is? It could be anybody just pretending to be Edward Van Halen. So this guy says he's Edward Van Halen. My mom answers the phone, and she's like, get on the other line. There's a guy says he's Eddie Van Halen. I'm like, what now? You know, my ears perk up. I'm 12, and I've never heard him speak before. I've never even heard him in an interview. I've only seen pictures of him on albums and stuff. So he's saying he wants to talk to my dad, and my only frame of reference is, well, there's a part in a Van Halen song where in Unchained, David Lee Roth says something, and then the response is somebody that comes over a speaker in the studio and says, come on, Dave, give us a break. And I'm like, well, that could have been Edward, or maybe that's the producer of the record, which it turns out it is Ted Templeman who says that. But I'm just filtering that through my mind, and I'm thinking, okay, I think there's a good chance this guy is actually Edward Van Halen. Long story short, my dad gets on the phone with him. They talk for a few minutes, and 15 minutes later, he's at our house. And he's wearing the jumpsuit from Women and Children First album cover. He's got the Van Halen necklace, the Van Halen logo, and he walks in with a guitar, not in a case, and it has a piece of tape over the headstock so you can't see what brand it is, because he was just about to endorse this company that no one had known yet called Kramer Guitars. And he walked in the stairs, up this staircase into the studio. My dad had a studio at home. And for me, he might as well have been backlit with a smoke machine, and it was a real-life superhero walking up the steps. And he came into the studio, and before there was even hellos, I was like, play Eruption, play Mean Street. And he plugged in, and he played this stuff, and I got to see it up close. And that was the moment where I was like, I need to do this. So let's maybe choose something from the record. I know we talked about Unchained, but look at this picture here. This is pretty sweet.
That's some good hair.
Yeah. So there's so many good things on this record, but you know, the intro to Mean Street, which is the very first track on the record, is one of the greatest things that's ever been played on the guitar. And it's super unique. And back in the day, you would have only been able to hear it and not see it up close. You would have no idea how he's doing what he's doing. Let's play the first song, Mean Street. And then if we play anything else, I would choose the song Push Comes to Shove, because it has my favorite solo of his of all time. But yeah, let's see. Just the intro alone on this is what made me want to be a guitar player. I was like, this is the coolest thing I've ever heard in my life. Oh, here it goes. So, as a kid, I heard that, and it was the most imaginative guitar playing that I had heard. It was just so free-flowing from him, and he was 24 when he played that. The guys in the band were between 24 and 26 years old. In any case, it was a very influential record for me, and I went on to continue to be able to learn from Edward Van Halen. He visited many more times, and he ended up being the producer of the very first thing I recorded when I was 12 years old and been playing guitar for 9 months. We recorded 2 songs at my dad's studio. The songs were called My Mother is a Space Cadet, and the flip side was called Crunchy Water. And I was fortunate to be able to learn how to play guitar in the studio from Edward. He showed me how to do overdubbing and all kinds of stuff. And then over the years, I was able to learn more things from him. And at the weirdest crossover point, though, was when I started playing a lot of my dad's music on tour. We opened for Jeff Beck at the Nokia Center back in, I think it was 2010. And Edward came to my show and then came backstage afterwards, and it was the reverse. He said, "You got to show me that song, that one that you guys played where you were talking about the pancakes, St. Alfonso's Pancake Breakfast." And there's a really difficult part that I played on guitar that wasn't meant to be played on guitar. It was written for marimba, but on my tour, I play it on guitar. And so I showed it to him. He's like, "I could never play that." So it was like the complete turning of, it's like role reversal. It was really a cool and unique experience.
Okay, so what was your first time hearing yourself on vinyl?
When we did My Mother's a Space Cadet, and it got played on K-Rock, which is a radio station out here, when I was 12. Now, the other things that were on the radio at that time, because this was 1982, maybe 1983, there was that band called Musical Youth. They were like a reggae band of kids that were from 12 to 16 or something, and they had a song called Pass the Doochie on the Left-Hand Side.
That's a bop.
Yeah.
It's still a bop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you could have heard My Mother's a Space Cadet and then Pass the Doochie back to back.
Okay, I know the word shred can be loaded, but using it in its most abstracted version, you have said about shred, quote, "You talk to anybody that's into shredding guitar, they can be into it as a kid, and then 30, 40 years later, they can still connect to what that is. There's something about that changed their perspective of life, and it made them into the person that they are. So how has shred made you who you are?"
Well, I think generally music has that power. It doesn't necessarily need to be shred guitar. I think music can hit you like nothing else. That's why it bolsters the emotional content in film, because it has the magical power that nothing else has.
Okay, on the taste versus technique slider, do you know this? I mean, this is like the classic conversation, taste versus technique.
Yep.
I personally like both.
Yeah.
But
well, if you're talking about specifically like guitar, for example, there might be some people that will prefer David Gilmour from Pink Floyd and think, "Oh, I like his solos because he does just enough fast stuff, but it's mostly melodic." Or some people might want to hear Yngwie Malmsteen because he plays 7 billion notes and they just want to hear that all the time. I think it just depends. If you have technique and you can be musical with the technique, that's obviously the best of both. And I think that's a much harder thing, because if you try to learn to play an instrument and you need to learn the technical things, you do have to spend a lot of time on it. And you have to practice doing it in a physical way so that it's something you can use. But at a certain point, if you're not making music that somebody feels something from or wants to hear again, then some of that technical stuff is not helping you out, So I think you really have to find the way to use it to where somebody's going to connect with it. And that's why I think Van Halen's a good example, because they were very technically skilled, but they wrote very memorable songs, and they promoted a feeling, and it was usually a high energy, like party rock kind of feel. And that kind of thing is actually much harder to do than people think, because they did it, and it was an authentic thing, and they reached the apex of what was possible in that. And I think Fair Warning was the apex of that band in terms of their creative output of like just pushing the boundaries. But you know, when it comes to making music, at the end of the day, I think most people prefer to make a connection and feel something from it rather than just be like slightly impressed by technique and then it's like in one ear and out the other.
Speaking of technique, let's play a record that you helped shape the sound of, like the actual sound of.
Sure.
You want to discuss this one?
Yeah, this one, you might know this record already because it had come out and it was pretty popular because it had Smoke on the Water on it.
It's
Deep Purple. Yes, so it's the Machine Head record. But last year, I was contacted by the label and the band to see about doing something that was for an anniversary of Smoke on the Water, because how many of you know that that song is actually about my dad? So how many of you have heard the song before? So 2 people knew it was about my dad, but most of you have heard the song before. And that's the thing that's always fascinating is people know the riff and they know Smoke on the Water, but they don't know the rest of it. And if you listen to like the second verse, it says Frank Zappa and the Mothers were at the best place around. Some stupid with a flare gun burned the place to the ground. My dad was playing at a venue in Switzerland where somebody literally shot a flare gun into the ceiling and burned the venue to the ground. And Deep Purple was supposed to play at that venue the night after my dad was playing there. So they could see across Lake Geneva this whole place burning down. And so they wrote a song about it. And yeah, we could go ahead and I guess we could play that if you want. So they asked me to help do something for I guess it was the 50th anniversary of the song. So I remixed the album in Atmos from the masters, and also they wanted it in stereo, and they ended up doing the stereo mix on vinyl, which I have not ever actually heard from a disc, so this will be my first time hearing this. But we might as well play Smoke on the Water so people can hear that verse.
And is there anything we should be listening for?
Well, you'll probably hear some different things. If we were to listen for the whole song, you would hear stuff at the end that's definitely different because there's something that the lead singer says at the very end of the song. There's more bass on this version. So if you're familiar with the song, you might hear a few more details from the keyboards and some more emphasis on just the power from the rhythm section. I was able to remix it from the actual master tapes. So that was definitely beneficial in Atmos for sure. And there's some fun things that happen if you do get a chance to listen to it on a proper system with speakers in Atmos. There's movement of certain things that make it interesting and exciting to connect with the music. But it is surprising how many people have heard that song many times in their life and not known that it's about a specific incident with my dad.
So speaking of your dad,
yes,
we saved him for last.
Sure.
What do you want to play next?
Well, I mentioned St. Alfonso's Pancake Breakfast because that was the song that Edward Van Halen wanted me to show him backstage. But it's also the song that as a kid, I watched him record this song. And if you're a kid and you hear a song about pancakes, it's the best song ever. So this song happens to be one of the shortest, most difficult songs in his repertoire. And it's like a 2.5 minute song, if that. And the end of it has this crazy marimba part, which we should just play the whole song. But when you hear that part at the end, imagine trying to play it on guitar.
First of all, or last of all, next of all, who has this record in their collection?
A few of you. Very nice. It is, to me, one of the best sounding records in his whole catalog. It's just got, I love all the stuff from the middle 70s anyway, but this is just a record that is kind of a great gateway album for people that don't know my dad's music. The whole Apostrophe record is a good way to get into it.
I rule.
I played this on guitar too.
Yes, indeed. Here we are. At St. Alfonso's Pancake Breakfast, where I stole the margarine and wheedled on the bingo cards and blew up the train. I saw a handsome parish lady make her entrance like a queen. Why, she was totally chenille and her old man was a Marine. As she abused the sausage patty and said, why don't you treat me? At St. Alfonso's Pancake Breakfast, where I stole margarine.
This part. So there you go. Thanks. Success.
So, to conclude, because the theme of this evening is a little bit about how records are memories, is there any memory that particular song or record?
Well, I can just remember being there when it was being made and seeing it being recorded, and of course, hearing him play it live so many times. But the experience of owning a record and going back to it and being able to recall exactly where you were the first time you heard it, I think that's part of the allure of music in general. But vinyl is one of those things that if you grew up in the original era of it, you have that total recall. In the same way that if something traumatic or something beautiful happens in your life and the music that's playing stays connected to that thing, it's just the power of music, but more so because of the physical nature of what it is. It's a tactile experience with the music, holding the music in your hands and placing a needle on it versus swiping and listening to it on a terrible speaker from your phone and not caring about what you're hearing anymore, you know. People used to buy like incredible stereos for their house to just enjoy music, and that just kind of disappeared.
Let's bring it back.
It should come back. Thanks, everybody.